A midterm election with higher than usual stakes.
The first bill that I will send to the Congress will be to codify Roe v. Wade.
A potential shift in the balance of power in an increasingly divisive political landscape.
In my personal opinion, the Biden administration sucks.
Republicans trying to hold on to governor's seats in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas.
This is completely different than the way things would be under Beto, because he said months ago, there is no problem on the border.
Against challengers who believe voters will demand change.
Those who will be the victims of the next mass shooting unless we act are counting on us at this moment.
And we'll be following the race for Shreveport mayor. An incumbent embroiled in controversy defends his office as challengers look to take the city in a new direction.
Plus, all the down ballot races, including the potential for Arkansas to become the first state in the South to legalize recreational marijuana.
From your local election headquarters, the race for Shreveport Mayor and the 2022 midterms. This is Campaign 2022, the Arklatex Vote, brought to you by Red River Credit Union.
Hello and welcome to our election special. I'm Dan Jovic. This is just the start of wall-to-wall coverage that we will have for you tonight, online and on air.
And I'm Jackie Jovic. There are so many things to talk about tonight as a city and a nation heads out to the polls. Now, we are bringing you team coverage of the race for Shreveport Mayor with reporters at watch parties across the city.
And we are also having extensive coverage of the biggest races in each region of the Arklatex, and you'll have a chance to chime in as we check in on what is trending both locally and what's trending around the country.
But first, let's get a check of the forecast as voters still have several hours left to make their way out to the polling locations.
That's right, Chief Meteorologist Todd Warren standing by to bring us that. Hi, Todd.
Hey, Dan, Jackie. Yeah, I couldn't ask for any better weather on Election Day. You can see we have seen the return of sunshine over most of the region. Quite a few clouds over the northern sections of the Arklatex, but we have nothing as far as rain to worry about. Where it's cloudy, it's a bit cooler. Temperatures in the upper 60s to lower 70s. Where we've seen more sunshine, we've warmed into the upper 70s to low to middle 80s. And as we go through the evening hours, if you haven't voted yet, looks like the weather will cooperate as we'll see temperatures fall from the 70s, or at least low 80s, down into the lower 70s here by mid-evening with skies remaining partly cloudy across the area. And it looks like, again, this nice weather is going to continue. So if you haven't had a chance to vote, weather's not an excuse not to do so.
All right, thank you so much, Todd. Well, the biggest story of the night is the race for mayor of Shreveport. Here's a look at the candidates. Lauren Ray Anderson, Libertarian. Tom Arsenault, Republican. Mario Chavez, no party. Livette Fuller, Democrat.
And Tracy Mendels is a Democrat, as is Adrian Perkins. Julius Romano is an independent. Melvin Slack, a Republican.
Greg Tarver, Democrat. Darrell Ware, Democrat.
And we are bringing you team coverage tonight for many of those candidates' watch parties.
We begin at Tom Arsenault's watch party. NBC6's Jessamine Wolk joins us now live from Superior Steakhouse. Jessamine?
Hey guys, that is right. So many eyes have been on the campaign of Tom Arsenault. Now, he is an attorney, and keep in mind, he's also a Republican, and the last 4 mayors of Shreveport have been Democrats. But Arsenault says it's time for change.
I think that Shreveport is at a critical time in its history, and it needs some mature, experienced leadership to help it go to the next level.
So a little background on Arsenault himself. In the past, he has shown that he is active in the community. He served as Shreveport councilman for District C from 1982 to 1990, and he also served as former assistant city attorney. Now, some of the top issues outlined by his campaign so far are economic development, working with youth, and working to curb crime. Now, we are at the Superior Steakhouse, and supporters will start to pour in here to closer to 8 p.m., and that is the same time that polls close in Louisiana. So we will keep you guys posted as the night progresses. Reporting live, this is Jasmine Wolk. Back to you. Going
to be an interesting night for the Arsenault campaign. Jasmine, thank you very much.
Well, we go now from one candidate hoping to become mayor to another who is doing his best to see another term. Incumbent Mayor Adrian Perkins seeks a second term to complete what he says is unfinished business.
NBC6's Shirley Busico joining us now live from Perkins' campaign headquarters on Jewella Avenue. Hi, Shirley.
Dan and Jackie, this isn't Perkins' first rodeo as he first took office back in 2018. He is seeking a second term in office, and although there were some obstacles along the way, he was actually put back on the November ballot in August following his disqualification after listing his mother's address instead of his condo in downtown Shreveport in his qualifying paperwork. Perkins voted during his early voting rally last Saturday.
When we came in, there was a deficit of negative $1.3 million in our operating budget. In the last audit, we have accumulated $36 million without any federal funding in just 3.5 years.
According to Perkins' campaign manager, he has been campaigning all throughout the city today. Dan and Jackie, as you know, I'm at Perkins' watch party. Doors were open as early as 8 this morning. And as you know, I will be here all night keeping you guys updated with today's election. For your local election headquarters, I'm Shirley Bustico.
Well, hey, at least they've got good music playing there, Shirley. You know, it's going to be a fun night for you. Thanks.
Keep it bouncing.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we turn now to a first-time mayoral candidate who has a bit of experience in political races. In fact, he's never lost one.
We're talking about State Senator Greg Tarver, who at the age of 76 says he's ready to become the city's next mayor. NBC6's Yalisha Gatewood joins us now live from the consortium venue on North Market Street. Yalisha?
Good evening, Dan and Jackie. I'm here, and this campaign watch will be. It's going to kick off right at 7:30. Louisiana State Senator Greg Tarver is a lifelong public servant. He's been representing Shreveport at the state capitol for over 30 years. The Democrat and long-term District 39 representative is now 76, and instead of stepping aside, he's trying to step up and run the city. We spoke to him a few weeks ago about his views for the city, and here's what he had to say.
I look at the city of Shreveport and I see nothing happening. The difference between business and government is the bottom line of government is service. The bottom line of business is profit. Shreveport are not giving the service to the people.
Says his 3+ decades as a politician make him uniquely qualified to run the city. And Tarver is just one of 10 candidates running for mayor tonight as he looks for a vote. Reporting in Shreveport for your local election headquarters, I'm Yalisha Gatewood.
All right, we'll be checking in with you throughout the night. Thank you, Yalisha.
Yeah, time right now to bring in our analyst, Pastor Theron Jackson. Joining us, of course, Pastor Theron was a former Shreveport City Council member and headed up the council back during his time. Pastor Theron, thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate you, not only on this election day, but all election days, spending your time with us.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I want to touch base on the issue of campaign finance because, yes, money does not win an election, but it does give you a pretty clear indication as to who's in the lead. Greg Tarver has the most money, but a lot of that money came from outside of Caddo Parish. Right. So is it a false sense of security that many are taking with Tarver's hopes tonight?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's false or not, but I can tell you specifically, as you said about the money, some of the money, as you know, already was there in another campaign. Right. He's a senator already, which means the war chest that you already have, the state law allows you to be able to transfer that for other races and to do other things with it. Mm-hmm. So he starts with that as a base, and then I think there are a lot of outside interests who may have as well invested because of the role that he already plays at a state level. So when it comes to fundraising, I think anybody who is a senator on the Senate Finance Committee in the state of Louisiana and puts themselves in a position to be able to raise money. Sure. And so that's not going to be an issue for him. But again, the candidate who raises the most money doesn't always win.
Is it an issue for Mayor Perkins, though? Because cash on hand, having $60,000, you would think that an incumbent mayor would have a little bit more than that at this point in time.
So I think that things are a little different for this mayor because this is his first time. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have the same kind of fundraising base as a political veteran would have as a first-term mayor. After 4 years, typically you would have thought it would have been more money, but I think you've got to also factor in 2 of those years you've been having the pandemic that's been going on consistently. People are less into the sport of politics now because life has gotten real. Not to mention we had a 100-year snowstorm in our community, and so there are a lot of different things that have happened, I think, to slow down what would have been, what many would advise a young candidate to do or a young mayor to do is to keep running from the day you get elected. It's an always campaign, you're always running, but it's hard to do that when you're stumbling through some of these things that are happening around us today.
Yeah, it's a 24/7 job. Those are the top two candidates, at least in the public's eye, on the Democratic side. But on the Republican side, there is only one candidate there. And this is different than previous elections.
Yes.
This vote will not be fractured. That has to benefit Tom Arsenault greatly.
Yeah. So I think what we see is reverting back to about 16 years ago, and then historically in the 20 years prior to that, where you knew you'd have a runoff, and it's typically going to be a Democrat and a Republican, and many times from a racial perspective, a white Republican and a black Democrat. About 16 years ago, that kind of changed.
Yes.
When for the first time, well, actually, not maybe 8 years ago it changed, because Cedric Glover was up against Jerry Jones, and we saw that same thing. And then when Mayor Ali Tyler was elected, there was a woman and a Republican and a Democrat, two women, white and black. And for the first time 4 years ago, we had two African Americans in a runoff. That's never happened before.
Sure.
So it appears that we may be going back to the time previous where there's a Republican, because with no other Republicans to speak of in the race, you would think that Arsenault to stand a good chance of being able to make the runoffs.
Yeah, and back, when Perkins was elected as our mayor, Theron, 9,500 conservatives voted for Mayor Perkins. Those are just the facts.
Right.
Do those 9,500 votes now shift solely to Tom Arsenault? And if so, that is a significant chunk that'll be coming his way.
I suspect that that's not impossible to do. So the real issue becomes, what else has Tom done besides just counted on those conservative Republicans to be his base? If he expanded in any way, shape, or form, then you got to think he's got to be formidable, at least to be second, if not a first place candidate, with the fracture. When you've got a mayor and there are 9 people running against him, if I'm the incumbent, I know I've got a base. If my base is 30%, whatever that base may be, then 9 people are fighting for that other 70%, and that fractures it significantly. So unless people are coalescing behind a single, sometimes maybe 2 candidates, then it bodes well as well for the incumbent or whoever may have a base as well.
I talked to a campaign manager who said they would not be surprised if the second place finisher tonight gets 19% of the vote and they make the runoff. Be interesting to see if that happens. Theron will be catching up with you over the course of our hour here digitally, and of course on all of our news coverage tonight as well. Jackie, going to be an interesting night tonight, and Theron, of course, providing some outstanding perspective from inside of the world of politics.
Yeah, I can't wait to see who makes the runoff. Thank you so much, Dan. Well, Caddo Parish voters will decide on 2 propositions that fund the library system. There are 2 millages that fund the general operation and capital improvements for the Shreve Memorial Library System. These are renewals that come up every 10 years. The first asks voters to approve 4.74 mills. The second is for 4.66 mills. The library shares that with the Caddo Correctional Center in a partnership where inmates can access books and other services. Library officials say approving the propositions are vital to keeping the libraries open for the public.
And of course, books and materials. You've got internet service, you've got computer services, you've got programming, and not only programming for children, but programming for teens, adults. We've got everything at the library for every age group. This millage is important, and that without it, you're not going to have a library.
There are 21 libraries throughout Caddo Parish, with one in every Shreveport neighborhood. There are also 4 propositions on the ballot in Caddo Parish. The property tax renewals cover everything from roads and prison to parks and pest control. Alexandra Meacham brings us an overview.
Caddo Parish voters will see 4 items on their ballots related to property tax renewals. Proposition 3 is a millage renewal for detention facilities. It funds 88% of operations at Caddo Correctional Center. The parish says it's greatly needed because the jail has outdated infrastructure and houses upwards of 1,500 inmates. It cost homeowners with a $200,000 home $5.75 per month.
So this jail is over 20 years old, and every given day the drains are clogged up. There's maintenance to be done on the boilers, on the water heaters.
Prop 4 is for roads, drainage, and garbage disposal, costing homeowners with $200,000 homes $625 per month. Prop 5 would continue funding the parish's health units, mosquito and rodent control, and the animal control facilities. Then there's Prop 6, which is a bond initiative that would expand and upgrade the Walter B. Jacobs Nature Complex. The park was built in 1975 and can no longer accommodate the huge amount of visitors they receive.
We would really like to be able to provide and meet the needs of more citizens and more requests, but currently we do have to turn down a number of those requests just because we don't have the capacity or available staff.
The bond would pay for a new state-of-the-art nature complex dedicated to environmental education and public events, costing homeowners with $200,000 homes $158 per month. If approved, the nature complex would be the first of its kind in the region.
Well, as Alexandra Meacham reporting there, and hey, she's joining us now. She's going to be focusing on the broader picture tonight.
That's right. Alex has our regional preview. Alex, where are we starting here tonight?
We're going to start in Texas. This is a closely watched race, Dan and Jackie, because Texas is voting on their governor tonight. Polls show it's pretty close between incumbent Republican Greg Abbott, who is seeking his third term, and Democratic challenger Beto O'Rourke, who almost beat Senator Ted Cruz in 2018. Both men hit the campaign trail hard, visiting communities throughout Texas. Governor Abbott has focused on his conservative platform, including border security, crime, and President Biden's leadership. Beto O'Rourke is the political opposite, focusing on gun reform, criminal justice reform, and abortion rights. Abbott has the support of the Republican Party and key members, while Beto O'Rourke is endorsed by several key Democrats plus several celebrities. Abbott says he wants to keep Texas from turning Democrat, while O'Rourke has called out Abbott for his decisions, including busing migrants to Washington, D.C. and the failing electric grid.
To keep Texas #1 for jobs and the economy. We support our law enforcement officers, period.
Young voters are going to win this election. They're turning out to reduce gun violence. They're turning out to restore a woman's right to make her own decisions about her own body. They're turning out to have the backs of our educators to
Now, Texas has seen many political changes over its history. It's gone red since the 1990s, but population changes have shifted its demographics. The other big race is Attorney General of Texas. Incumbent Ken Paxton is seeking his third term while he's being investigated by the FBI for malfeasance in office and was indicted for securities fraud. He faces civil rights attorney as his Democratic challenger, Rochelle Garza. UT Austin polling also shows this race is hotly contested and could flip from Republican to Democrat. Texas gained a seat in the U.S. House after the 2020 census. The seat for House District 1 is up for grabs and covers East Texas. It's between Republican Nathaniel Moran and Democrat Jamar J.J. Jefferson. Moran is a Smith County judge, and Jefferson is a political newcomer from Texarkana. Now, Dan and Jackie, turning back to the governor's race, Beto O'Rourke says this is really going to depend on young voters, and we saw how turnout is going today. So that's really going to determine how this race plays out tonight.
I think it's the key for him overall. He needs to get young voters to the polls. We'll see if they do. Historically, that's not been the case. Alex, thanks so much. Well, turning our attention now from regional politics to national politics, Brittany DeFran is keeping an eye on the headlines happening all across America.
She joins us now from our digital studio with what's trending. Hi, Brittany.
That's right. Hey guys, I'm here in the KTAL News Now Digital Center, and so we're covering a few races that maybe they've seen some controversy or they've been trending socially. Also some added importance as well that we'll touch on in a bit here. So let's start by looking at the Georgia Senate race here, and from early voting to election day, it seemed Democratic incumbent Raphael Warnock was in the lead, but since then, GOP challenger Herschel Walker was able to close that gap despite some of the controversy this former football star faced, and some of that controversy is surrounded by allegedly paying for his ex-girlfriend's abortion after publicly condemning it. Now, this race here is neck and neck, and now let's turn to another race here. And this race here, it has the Democrats and both Republicans on the edge of their seat, because what is on the line here is the control for Senate. Now, we're looking here at Pennsylvania, where Dr. Mehmet Oz, who got his start with Oprah. Actually, she was one who's been rooting for Democrat candidate John Fetterman, and Fetterman has also received endorsement from President Biden and former President Obama. So, but you know, despite those endorsements, it seems that Republican candidate Dr. Oz has been able to stay in this race using some last-minute GOP ads, and it seems like a lot of money spent there. So right now, the Senate is split 50-50, and with Democrats in charge because of the agenda, because they have the White House, it looks like Republicans here, they're looking to just get that solidify control of one more seat to, you know, even out the odds right there. And so, you know, we're going to continue to watch these races as, you know, the results come in later on. We'll be able to watch that come in, and we'll keep track on these races, but we also want to engage with you guys online, so you can jump over here and download that QR code you see right there on your screen. We have a few poll questions we wanted to ask you guys throughout the night. Here's the first one. Which issue is most important to you this election? We have economy, crime, infrastructure, and abortion. So far, it looks like economy is taking the lead, but you can go ahead and answer this question right here by downloading that QR code or head on over to our website, ktalnews.com. You can also download our app at KTAL News Now. I'll be here in the Digital Center watching everything trending, but back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thank you so much, Brittany. Democrats certainly have a fight on their hands nationally. We're going to talk about things happening here in Louisiana, though. One thing specifically, which has really caught my attention, I think is very interesting, is it was Prop 7, the constitutional amendment theoretically abolishing slavery, which was done a very long time ago. But it's kind of deceptive because it doesn't really do what it says it does. I mean, we got rid of the word slavery in our Constitution. Right. So let's talk about that.
So Representative Edmund Jordan, that's what it is, thank you. Edmund Jordan, when he put this together, the idea was to clear up the language in our Constitution because we have the most archaic Constitution in the United States of America.
You can't do anything without an amendment to our Constitution.
We have amendments, and so this one actually would put us over 300 amendments that we've had since 1974. But what it did was sought to change the language in the Constitution to take out the notion of involuntary servitude, even when a person is incarcerated. So the language currently says that when a person incarcerated, it can be used for involuntary servitude, layman's terminology. The idea was to just take that out, and so when it was printed, however, he was disappointed that it didn't get printed for the ballot the way the spirit of what he was saying. Because on the ballot now, there's language that says except for the administration of criminal justice. The notion of the administration of criminal justice is the same thing as a person being incarcerated doing the work. So Representative Jordan has asked the citizens around Louisiana to vote no on 7. Now, there's a lot of folks who were social justice advocates and activists who were for Prop 7 or Constitution Amendment 7 because it just makes sense to the average hearer that we're going to ban slavery. It should have been banned a long time.
Yeah, that word, of course, is
notion. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what it was. It became a hot button issue, but there's some language, and in our Constitution, language is everything, and so we have to make sure that it's right. And so my concern is what happens if it passes. Are they able to come back and try to modify it again?
And here's a really big question, theoretical, philosophical. The fact that people who are incarcerated can be used for involuntary servitude. I mean, there's a whole, how can I say this? Philosophical. People are saying, okay, let's just put more people in prison, and that's what's been happening as we have privatized our institutions, that we just put more people in prison and then they're basically slaves.
Right. Well, it's not unusual, and you will note that in 1865, after there was an emancipation and then we got the 13th Amendment, what happened is post the 13th Amendment, where it says except for being incarcerated, then people started, we get laws like loitering and other things that were just simple crimes that would allow people to be arrested, because as soon as they're arrested, then we created a system that we call convict leasing. So now the penal system in cooperation with businesses now will give you free labor as a contract, and you get money this way. So convict leasing is a very real thing that still kind of happens right now. And so I think the idea is to try to clean it up, because I think people who are of less goodwill will certainly try to manipulate the process and use it for exactly what you described.
Yes, and I know Sheriff Prater got into a little bit of a problem by using that terminology.
Exactly right. And I think some people would be surprised to know how modern it really is, and how we think it was a long time ago, but it's still happening even now, unfortunately.
Yes. All right, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Thank you so much. Well, Texas voters will choose their agriculture commissioner. Monica Madden introduces us to the candidates.
Sid Miller and Susan Hayes grew up in neighboring Central Texas towns with family roots in agriculture. But today, the two could not be more opposite in their visions for the ag department.
We're oceans apart, obviously.
In seeking a third term as ag commissioner,
Howdy, neighbors.
Miller is standing by his record and says he still has more to do.
When I came on board, we didn't do exports. We had a Go Texan local marketing program. I launched a global outreach initiative. We lead the nation now in agriculture exports, and I'm having to build more livestock export facility.
Miller has a history of inflammatory social media posts. Critics have questioned his ethics, something his opponent is trying to capitalize on.
Miller is just a constant ethical clown show. I'm going to clean that office up and lead by example.
Hayes, a lawyer, wants to expand rural health care access, promote sustainable agriculture, and legalize cannabis.
I have a lot of ideas of how to build this office up and make it work better, not just for rural Texas, but also urban Texans who want access to better, healthier food.
On marijuana, you will find a slight overlap between the two.
I'm pushing for full medical cannabis. I'm not for the recreational use.
I am for legalizing cannabis. We need to have a healthy regulatory system to make sure the products are safe.
And that was Monica Madden reporting. As far as endorsement goes, both have earned high-profile Republican support.
3 former Texas Supreme Court justices, all Republicans, have endorsed Democrat Hayes. Miller enjoys the endorsement of former President Donald Trump.
Well, turning now to Arkansas, Alexandra Meacham joins us now again with another regional review.
That's right, Ann and Jackie. There is a lot going on in Arkansas, some hotly contested races and some very interesting propositions. Starting with their governor, Asa Hutchinson has reached his term limit, so there will be a new governor. It is between a nationally known name and those looking to make history. Polling by the University of Arkansas shows daughter of former Governor Mike Huckabee, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, is in the strong lead as the Republican candidate. She faces Democratic challenger Chris Jones, who is a preacher's son who studied at MIT for nuclear engineering and urban planning, and Libertarian Ricky Del Harrington Jr., who made history as the first black man to run for senator in Arkansas.
I think we're going to have an amazing night on Tuesday, send a very strong, clear message that Arkansas is a conservative state, and we're going to show what we stand for.
It's education, starting with pre-K. It's infrastructure, starting with broadband, and it's real economic development across the whole state, starting with jobs.
I chose to walk this hard path, and I hope that the people will see someone choosing to walk that hard path and doing the best that he can with the resources that he can.
Now, the Senate race in Arkansas is closely watched, since the outcome will affect the partisan balance in the U.S. Senate. Incumbent Republican Senator John Bozeman is running for a 3rd term against Democrat Natalie James, the first black woman to receive the senatorial Democratic nominee, and Libertarian candidate Kenneth Cates. For Congress, House District 4, which covers Texarkana and Hope, incumbent Republican Congressman Bruce Westerman is seeking his 5th term. He's running against Democrat John White and Libertarian Gregory Maxwell. There's also some big ballot measures in Arkansas. Issue 1 and 2 affects the state legislature, calling special sessions and holding a supermajority to vote on constitutional amendments. And the popular Issue 4 is where voters will decide whether to legalize marijuana in Arkansas, which, Jane and Jackie, the polling for this shows it's both bipartisan and favors over 60%. So we're going to see how that turns out tonight.
Yeah, it is weird. That issue has kind of swung back and forth on the pendulum over the last couple of weeks. We'll see how voters decide this evening. Alex, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, now let's get another check on the forecast with Chief Meteorologist Todd Warren. Todd?
Well, Jackie, looking pretty nice here for Election Day, as we have seen quite a few clouds across the area, which are decreasing over much of the region. You can see sunshine in Shreveport, Coshada, as well as some sunshine in Marshall. Still some lingering clouds over the northern sections of the area. And where we have the clouds, temperatures still in the 60s, but where we have seen the sunshine, we did hit the 80s, but we're slowly cooling off and now into the 70s across a good chunk of the southern half of the Arklatex. And this evening, don't expect much of a drop, as we'll see skies area-wide likely become partly cloudy. Temperatures will slowly fall into the lower 70s by the time the polls close later on this evening. And again, nothing really too much to worry about as far as rainfall. Dan?
Perfect forecast for Election Day. Tom, thanks so much. Rejoined by Pastor Theron Jackson now. Theron, Greg Tarver, he's such an interesting candidate to me because you don't often see 76-year-old men who want to enter into a race like this. You know, politics is tending to be a young man's game. I guess on a national level it's an old man's game, but it tends to be a young man's game. And 76-year-old, if he is elected, he will be 80 at the end of his term. And yet, you know, we're talking and tossing around the idea of things being new. Here we are, a lifelong politician who'd be 80 if he's elected. It's just, it's an interesting dichotomy to me.
Well, I think, you know, because I'd like to be contemplating doing what I'd like to do when I'm 76 or 80, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to be anti that. But I won't be running for mayor, I promise you.
I'm going to have my feet in the sand too, buddy.
But I think one of the things we talk about is we talk about casting vision for the city. The question becomes, where does that vision come from? And I think a lot of what I've heard said is that we want to make sure this is a city our kids want to come back to.
Sure.
It's hard for our kids to come back here when there's no opportunity for them, and when the symbol of that opportunity is that older people have to take leadership, and there's no space for younger people. And so when there are younger people, my question becomes, what do we do to build that leadership? And 4 years ago, Senator Tarver was a supporter of Mayor Perkins when Mayor Perkins first decided to run. And so I guess since then he's changed his thought process about that support. But I just think that if we start talking about opportunity, then it can't look to me at the top like we're damming up opportunity with people who have been there and done that. It speaks to more of the same, not a lot that speaks to change, in my opinion.
You talk about leadership. Steve Prater is viewed as a leader in our city, and he's very, very popular. But Senator Tarver and Steve Prater have a very good, close relationship. With black voters, how do you see that relationship impacting the vote today? Well,
I don't think the sheriff is not as popular in the black community or among all black voters, perhaps even as Senator Tarver has been. And I don't think that that one can help the other to make that the situation. So I think everybody is looking at each of those individuals on their individual merit, and so one's not going to cover for the other. And I can't speak for whether or not his relationship with the sheriff will help him in other parts of outside of his base. Let me say, I'm not sure. I'm sure he would hope so. But I think it's an interesting dynamic. But I think that we have to think about, as I think you said eloquently, it's the future of the past. And it's not that people who are older cannot continue to contribute. It's just that we have to create a situation where folks feel like they're a part of this process, and our younger people feel like they're a part of this process, because our greatest export, if you ask me, is talent. Yeah. And a lot of young people leave this city time after time, and the opportunity ought to be the only magnet that really will bring them back, not some allegiance to this geography. This area tends to look to the past, not to the future. Absolutely. We shall see. Theron, thank you very much for that. And of course, we are bringing you team coverage all night long for many of the candidates' watch parties. We begin at Tom Arsenault's in the second half hour of our digital coverage. That's where we find NBC6's Jessamine Woke. She joins us now live from Superior Steakhouse. Hi, Jessamine.
Hey guys, that is right. Many eyes have been on the campaign of attorney Tom Arsenault. Now keep in mind, he is a Republican and the last 4 mayors of Shreveport have been Democrats. But according to Arsenault, yes, it's time for change.
I think that Shreveport is at a critical time in its history, and it needs some mature, experienced leadership to help it go to the next level.
Now, a little background on Arsenault himself. In the past, he has shown that he's active in the community. He served as Shreveport councilman for District C from 1982 to 1990, and he also served as former assistant city attorney. And some of the top issues outlined by his campaign include economic development, youth, and working to curb crime. Now, his campaign told us that they partook in early voting, and his supporters will start to pour into here closer to 8 o'clock, the same time that polls begin to close at Louisiana. So we will continue to keep you posted as the night develops. Reporting live, this is Jessamine Woke. Back to you.
All right, Jessamine, thank you very much. We're turning our attention back to a first-time mayoral candidate who's got plenty of political experience in races. Jackie, he's never lost one.
We are talking about State Senator Greg Tarver, who at the age of 76, as you guys were talking about, says he's ready to become the city's next mayor. NBC6's Yalisha Gatewood joins us now from the Consortium venue on North Market Street, the site of Greg Tarver's watch party. Hi, Yalisha.
Yeah, good evening, Dan and Jackie. I'm here, and that watch party is going to get kicked off right at 7:30. Louisiana State Senator Greg Tarver is a lifelong public servant, and he's been representing Shreveport at the state capitol for over 30 years now. The Democrat and longtime District 39 representative is now 76, and instead of stepping aside, he's trying to step up and run the city. We spoke to him a few weeks ago about his views for the city, and here's what he had to say.
I look at the city of Shreveport and I see nothing happening. The difference between business and government is the bottom line of government is service. The bottom line of business is profit. Shreveport are not giving the service to the people.
Tarver says his 3+ decades as a politician make him uniquely qualified to run for the city. Now, Tarver is just one of 10 candidates hoping to win for mayor tonight. Reporting in Shreveport for your local election headquarters, I'm Elisha Gatewood.
All right, Elisha, thank you.
Well, from a state senator vying to become mayor to a Caddo Parish commissioner with the same goal, businessman and entrepreneur Mario Chavez says he wants to run the city more like a business.
That's right. NBC6's Asia Tab joins us now live from the Supper Club on Commerce, the site of Mario Chavez's watch party. Hi, Asia.
Hey guys, yeah, it's really quiet right now, but that's because the event doesn't start until 7 o'clock. Now, he's been holding that position since 2016 in District 10. Now, just some information about him. He served that, and he changed from Republican to a no-party candidate to run for mayor. Now, as a successful business owner, he believes he has the best experience in economic development ideas that the city could benefit from.
Creator, and what I'd like to see is there's so many different aspects of the city that we don't look to capitalize, or at least I think our current administration and previous administrations have not looked at these aspects that they could capitalize on to produce revenue.
And again, this starts again tonight at 7, and we'll be giving you more live coverage throughout the night. For your local election headquarters, I'm Asia Tab.
Thank you so much, Asia. Well, Alexandra Meacham back with our final regional review of the hour.
That is right, Dan and Jackie. We're going to start with our home state of Louisiana. We got a political powerhouse with some newcomers in a very crowded field. Let's take a look at Louisiana. In Louisiana, the Senate race has drawn a crowded field of 12 candidates. Incumbent Republican Senator John Kennedy is considered the favorite candidate by far as he seeks his second term. Kennedy has name recognition, the support of the Republican Party, and the power of his war chest. He has outraised all of his challengers by double with $37 million in campaign funds. His Democratic opponents are quick to call out his voting record, including his vote against the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, and expanded medical access to veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. Now, Luke Mixon is a commercial airline pilot, and Gary Chambers is a community activist from Baton Rouge. They're considered the most popular Democrats in this race.
Democratic opponents who believe in defunding the police, they said it was racist. Now, this is America. They're entitled to their opinion.
In desperate need of responsible leadership. We're in desperate need for someone who's going to fight for Louisiana families, who's going to create safe communities.
We rank 48 in education, 46 in health care, 47 in opportunity, and 50 in crime. And John Kennedy's been elected almost as long as I've been alive.
Now, Senator Kennedy declined multiple requests for interviews for news stations across Louisiana. We found him in Stonewall earlier this month during a town hall. Mixon and Chambers believe they will force Kennedy into a runoff. However, Dan and Jackie, several polls put Kennedy's well over that 50% needed just to win outright tonight. So we're going to see how it plays out.
All right. Thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah, Alex, appreciate that. Wouldn't be surprised if that does, in fact, happen. We're going to touch base with our digital anchor here, Brittany DeFran, here in 1 second. But in the meantime, why don't we bring back in our analyst,
I think that's a great
Theron
idea.
Jackson. Let's
He's
do it.
got
I'm going to
such
head
great
on over there
insight.
and talk to Theron right now. And Theron, we've touched base on a couple different candidates here in the race, but we haven't touched base on the incumbent mayor, Adrian Perkins. And Adrian Perkins has been embroiled in a bit of controversy from the legislative audits findings to the claims of Ben Aber and the lawsuit filed against him, and then, you know, just most recently, the claims of payments not being made to the retirement funds of both police officers and Shreveport firefighters. Are voters starting to get a sense here that things inside of City Hall are not being run as a well-oiled machine?
I think that may be what it is. I think we exist at a time where all of these executive offices become the most popular races. Whether they're the most important races, I don't think. But the most popular races, yes. And so who's a mayor, who's a governor, who's a president? Usually the things that really matter. Right. But that's not what makes the machine run. And very often they get the props when it's good, and they get the knots when it's not so good. And that's just kind of what it is. But certainly no mayor unilaterally, if you understand the way our charter works, has a sole responsibility for funding a pension. I mean, the money in our city is the responsibility of the city council. And so you look to the mayor for leadership, no question. And so a lot of those things that happen you have to understand as well happens because there's not as much experience with that. When you elect people who don't have as much experience in those areas, you got to be sure that you understand that the bureaucrats become that much more important because, again, here's a mayor's first time. The citizens of this city have said in the last 8 years, twice, for the first time in the history of our city, we elected 2 people, Mayor Ollie Tyler and then Mayor Adrian Perkins, who had not served on the city council. Other than that, never in the history of our city have we ever elected a mayor who had not been a city councilman first. But the last 2, the city's saying something, right? And so then people decry this notion of, well, what about the experience? But we voted twice and said we didn't want that kind of situation. And so I think you got to look for some of those things to happen, but you've got to have an administration who is thinking about closing some of these gaps of where there's some vertical learning curves, if you will. But then that's what the city council's for. Sure. I mean, you've got 7 people over there. If they're equally as inexperienced, again, we had a majority inexperienced council this time around.
That is the case.
And so this is so it's the government was that. But heavy is the head that wears the crown. So it may be unfair to those particularly inside the administration, for those of us who know how it actually works. But, you know, it's all about you campaign in poetry and people look for you to govern in poetry. It's not that easy. And so I think he's been the victim of the same thing every other person's going in there. I mean, we don't have popular executives anymore.
So, you know, to the issue of inexperience, there is no experience like experience. So the only way you gain it is time on the job. So, let's dissect Adrian Perkins' first 2 years to his last 18 months, because the last 18 months have been productive. Largely the first 2 years were not.
Yeah, because you've got a learning curve when you come in.
Of course, absolutely.
So when you've got a learning
curve. That's what voters ask for.
Exactly right.
Yes, I know.
You said that's okay for you to OJT, right? But you got to know that that comes with some growing pains, right? And so, unfortunately, when 2020 hit, then everything you could have thought about doing puts the brakes on it. And so I've said to many people, God bless them, because I wouldn't want to run for re-election after these last couple of years and the way people respond to that, as if there's nobody to get counsel for a 100-year snowstorm. Who do you get counsel from a global pandemic? Who can tell you what to do? No governor, no president, nobody in America knew what to do. And so I'm just glad the city's held on. I look at our financial position, we're in a better place. And so I just think that heavy is the head that wears the crown. He just had to suck it up, be a big boy. But I heard somebody talk about business. I mean,
got about 20 seconds left.
Okay, so at any rate, government's different than business. We can't forget that. It's designed to work slow. And so I think we've got to understand that as well.
Sometimes maybe too slow for some. Theron, thank you so very much. You're going to be with us throughout the evening, and we appreciate having you here. Going to walk back on over and touch base with Jackie here as we wrap up our digital coverage here. The start of a very interesting night, Jackie.
It is very, very exciting. There's been great early voter turnout, slow turnout, it seems like, in the city of Shreveport today, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think the voter turnout is going to be key, because we know at our voting location, what we saw today, there was heavy voter turnout in South Shreveport. Many of the other locations around town, not so much.
Yeah. All right, well, stay with us all night long, because we're going to have all the results for you coming up later.